Blood streamed from the Zorgax's mangled leg as its desperate whines echoed across Zorg Prime's craggy surface, the helpless creature awaiting salvation that no race dared attempt. Except the humans. Jacob Miller, grizzled mercenary and one of the last humans in the galaxy, glared at the flickering screen of his ship's communicator. The face of Xander, an Ocampa diplomat, stared back with a somber gaze. The stranded Zorgax was revered for secreting a substance that could cure deadly Ocampan diseases, yet every rescue attempt had failed, leaving the rare creature to whimper in the planet's dense asteroid fields and savage electrical storms. "You're the only one who can save it, Jacob. Humans have the tenacity and resourcefulness no other species possesses. If the Zorgax dies—" Xander trailed off, glancing away. "Our entire race will follow within a generation." Jacob snorted, arms crossed. Years of thankless jobs had left him jaded. And what's in it for me? "The Galactic Council will pay any price," Xander assured quickly, meeting Jacob's stare. "Please, before the catastrophic war with your machine creations razed Earth, humans were legendary for daring what others couldn't, for saving those who couldn't save themselves." Something tugged in Jacob's chest, a feeling he'd thought long extinguished. He sighed. "Fine, but I better get double for this shit." Relief flooded Xander's features as he nodded, but Jacob killed the transmission, already setting coordinates for Zorg Prime. "Got a bad feeling about this," he muttered as the ship lurched into warp, racing to prevent an alien species extinction, or die trying. Jacob tensed as his ship lurched out of hyperspace into the Zorg system. Immediately, he found himself surrounded by a cloud of asteroids, swirling chaotically around Zorg Prime's sickly green atmosphere. The fragments were the remains of one of the planet's shattered moons. "Goddamn space rocks," he muttered, swerving to avoid a chunk of rock the size of a house. "Gotta find that Zorgax fast." Jacob flipped a few switches on his console, activating the ship's advanced scanners. They hummed to life and began sweeping the planet, searching for the Zorgax's life signs. But before they could pinpoint the creature's location, the scanners sputtered and died, their screens filling with static. "What the hell?" Jacob growled, slamming his fist on the console. Strange energy surges were bombarding the ship, scrambling its systems. Suddenly, a massive bolt of green lightning shot up from Zorg Prime's cloud cover. It narrowly missed Jacob's ship, the heat of its passing scorching the hull. The bolt slammed into a nearby asteroid, instantly vaporizing it into a cloud of molten slag. More blasts followed, forcing Jacob to throw his ship into a series of stomach-churning evasive maneuvers. Alarm klaxons blared as the ship's hull integrity began to drop under the relentless assault. The mysterious energy surges prevented Jacob from raising his shields. He gritted his teeth, knuckles white on the controls, as he pushed the ship forward, desperate to find a gap in the electrical storm. There, a small opening in the lightning-streaked clouds. Jacob gunned the accelerator and angled the ship towards it, plotting a rough landing trajectory. He muttered a prayer to deities he didn't believe in, as the ship plummeted into Zorg Prime's acid-green atmosphere. The ship hit the planet's surface like a meteor, gouging a deep crater into the rocky red landscape. It screeched and sparked across the charred ground before finally coming to a bone-jarring halt at the base of a towering obsidian mountain range. Jacob groaned, his head pounding. He quickly checked himself over, bruised to hell but nothing broken. He made sure his trusty plasma rifle was still in one piece, then gathered his survival gear and kicked open the hatch. He climbed out of the smoking wreckage of his ship, his boots crunching on the charred soil of Zorg Prime. The air was thick and acrid, burning his lungs. He squinted up at the sickly green sky, trying to get his bearings. A piercing shriek made his head snap up. A massive creature was descending towards him from the clouds, its leathery wings unfurled, barbed horns gleaming. It had a fanged maw large enough to swallow a man whole, and its eyes burned with ravenous hunger as it extended its razor-sharp claws towards him. "Great. That's just great," Jacob sighed, unslung his rifle. Looked like this job was going to be even less easy than he'd thought. He flicked off the safety and took aim at the beast, finger tightening on the trigger as it dove towards him, its shriek echoing across the rugged landscape. Jacob squeezed the trigger, sending a bolt of superheated plasma into the creature's skull. It fell from the sky, trailing green ichor. Jacob's Geiger counter started clicking urgently as the corpse hit the ground. He glanced at the readings. The thing's blood was hot enough to cook an egg. No wonder the Ocampa ships got shredded if they tried to land here without rad shielding. A ping from his suit's radar made Jacob's head snap up. A whole flock of the winged horrors was heading his way, fast. His wrecked ship was a useless scrap heap. It wouldn't provide any cover. Jacob spotted a narrow crack in the black cliffs and sprinted for it, barely diving inside as the horde swooped down, bathing the spot he'd just been standing in with radioactive flames. He caught his breath, then flicked on his suit's bioscanner. He'd need to set it to the Zorgax's unique signature. Once it locked on, Jacob did a double take. "You gotta be shitting me," he growled. The damn thing was somewhere deep inside the mountain. He checked his rifle's energy cell. Still mostly full, it'd have to do. Jacob turned and started picking his way deeper into the caves, the beams from his suit lights throwing freakish shadows across the gleaming rock. The scanner flickered, the same weird energy from before screwing with it, but it was enough for Jacob to navigate by. As he ventured further, a sickly green glow began to emanate from up ahead. The tunnel opened up into an enormous cavern, and Jacob had to pick his jaw up off the floor. There was a massive crystal, at least 50 feet tall, pulsing with emerald light in the middle of the chamber, and cowering at the base, whimpering and shaking, was a furry critter the size of a cat, the Zorgax. Jacob watched, his brain struggling to make sense of what he was seeing. Glowing tendrils of energy unfurled from the giant crystal, slowly enveloping the helpless Zorgax. Jacob didn't hesitate. He vaulted over the ledge into the cavern, blasting away at the tendrils with his rifle. The bolts vanished into the crystal like they were nothing. The huge gem started pulsing, shifting from green to an angry red. An unbearable shriek pierced the air, and a crack split open in the crystal's face. A nest of slitted, hate-filled eyes glared out at Jacob from the gap. "Ah, shit!" he spat. He grabbed the Zorgax, tucking it under one arm, and turned to haul ass out of the cave. A torrent of red death erupted from the crystal creature, the heat of it scorching his back as he ran, the stone walls slagging into molten rivers behind him. Sweat poured down Jacob's face as he sprinted through the crumbling tunnels, the unconscious Zorgax clutched to his chest. With a final desperate lunge, he hurled himself out of the cave mouth just as the mountain imploded behind him in a maelstrom of clashing energies. Gasping for air, Jacob laid the Zorgax on the rocky ground. It was still breathing, but each breath was labored and shallow. His suit's biometric scanner beeped urgently as he ran it over the creature's small form. "Severe energy depletion," the scanner reported, its voice tinged with static from the interference. "Immediate medical attention required." "Shit," Jacob spat. He scooped up the Zorgax and ran for his crashed ship, praying that the emergency medkit had survived impact. He skidded to a halt as he rounded an outcropping and saw his ship, or what was left of it. The hull was ripped open, jagged tears in the metal still glowing from heat, and clustered around it, tearing at the exposed wiring with tooth and claw, were dozens of the winged horrors. "God damn it," Jacob snarled. These things weren't just scavengers, they were deliberately targeting technology, probably some defense mechanism left over from the war. He laid the Zorgax behind a boulder, checked his rifle's charge, and vaulted over the rock, peppering the creatures with plasma fire. They scattered with shrieks of rage, then wheeled in the air and dove at him, a storm of fangs and talons. Jacob fell back, blasting the creatures as they swooped and slashed. But there were too many. He was forced to retreat back to the boulder, the beasts harrying him with gouts of radioactive fire. He crouched behind the meager cover, mind racing. He couldn't fight them all off. But he had to get to that medkit. The Zorgax. A soft chirp made him look down. The Zorgax had woken up, its eyes glassy with pain. It chirped again, the sound pitiful and weak. To Jacob's shock, the winged creatures faltered in their attack. Some hovered uncertainly, others cocked their heads as if confused. Memory flashed through Jacob's mind, a briefing years ago before the war, when there'd still been hope for peace with the machines. The Zorgax's unique vocalizations, the diplomat had said, had a calming effect on many species. They were revered as ambassadors, symbols of harmony. Jacob grabbed the Zorgax. "Keep making noise," he urged, "as loud as you can." The Zorgax trilled, the sound gaining strength as Jacob ran, weaving through the obsidian spires. The creatures chasing them slowed, then stopped, hovering in place, as if hypnotized by the Zorgax's song. Jacob didn't stop running until the creatures were far behind. He checked his scanner. There was something large and metallic, not far ahead in a ravine, a ship or outpost maybe, if he could reach it. He looked back. The creatures were dispersing, weapons lowered, the rage fading from their eyes. The Zorgax's song echoed across the alien landscape, a melody of peace. "Nice job, little buddy," Jacob muttered. He started down into the ravine, the Zorgax cradled in his arms. "Let's get you patched up." Jacob stumbled down the rocky slope of the ravine. The unconscious Zorgax clutched to his chest. His muscles burned with exhaustion, his breath coming in ragged gasps. At the bottom of the ravine, a strange sight greeted him, the wreckage of an ancient Ocampa ship, its hull encrusted with glowing alien flora. Jacob approached the vessel cautiously, his plasma rifle at the ready. He stepped through a gaping hole in the hull, the metal edges still warm from re-entry. Inside, emergency lights flickered, casting eerie shadows across the corroded bulkheads. Following the ship's signs, Jacob made his way to the medical bay. To his relief, it was largely intact, its advanced equipment humming with power. He laid the Zorgax on a table and activated the auto-dock, watching as robotic arms extended, scanning the creature's wounds. As the machine worked, Jacob explored the ship, looking for a way off this hellish planet. In the cargo hold he found something unexpected, a cache of weapons, their designs unlike anything he'd seen before. They pulsed with a sickly, familiar light. With rising dread, Jacob scanned the weapons. Their energy signatures matched the crystal entity from the mountain, the thing that had imprisoned the Zorgax. Realization crashed over him like a cold wave. The Ocampa hadn't come to Zorg Prime to save the Zorgax. They'd come to study the entity, to weaponize its power. Fury ignited in Jacob's veins. Xander had lied to him, manipulated him, all to get his hands on these weapons, no matter the cost. Jacob armed himself with the Ocampa tech, his jaw clenched with grim resolve. Leaving the Zorgax to heal, he marched out of the ship, back towards the shattered obsidian mountain. As he approached the ruins, the ground shook. A malevolent red glow spilled from the rubble. With a deafening roar, the crystal entity burst from the debris, its hateful gaze fixed on Jacob. The battle was swift and brutal. Jacob fired the Ocampa weapons, their beams tearing into the entity. It retaliated with blasts of searing energy, the very air shimmering with heat. Mountains crumbled and canyons split as they fought, the planet trembling beneath them. With a final desperate shot, Jacob shattered the entity into 1,000 pieces. It collapsed, its light fading, the weapons in Jacob's hands turning to slag. Battered and bloody, Jacob limped back to the Ocampa ship. In the med bay he found the Zorgax awake, watching him with bright, curious eyes. Suddenly the comm panel lit up. Xander's face appeared, contorted with cold fury. "Return the Zorgax and the weapons immediately," he hissed, "or face the consequences." Jacob met his gaze, a humorless smile on his lips. He cut the transmission without a word. He knew this choice would paint a target on his back. The Ocampa would hunt him to the edges of the galaxy. But as he looked at the innocent creature before him, he knew it was a price he was willing to pay. Jacob scooped up the Zorgax and headed for the cockpit, firing up the ship's engines. The stars beckoned, promising new adventures and challenges. The Zorgax cooed softly in his arms as they broke atmosphere, leaving the ruins of Zorg Prime behind. The Ocampa had used him, and now they would learn the consequences of betraying Jacob Miller. But for now he had a new mission, to protect the last Zorgax, no matter the cost. Jacob plotted a course for the outer rim, to the lawless fringes beyond Ocampa space. The ship jumped to light speed, the stars blurring into streaks of light. In the co-pilot's seat, the Zorgax chirped happily, its eyes wide with wonder as it watched the universe unfold before it. The road ahead would be hard, and the price high. Enemies old and new would dog their steps. But for the first time in years, Jacob felt a flicker of something he thought long dead, a sense of purpose, of hope. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.